Welcome to OOD Works, the podcast, a show about unique individuals and the services provided by Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, the state agency that helps individuals with disabilities find a job and be more independent. Here's your host, Kim Jump.
Okay, so on today's OOD Works podcast, we have Scott Fedor. Scott, thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Absolutely. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I've read your book. I want to encourage everyone to go out and get Headstrong. I've been reading it the last 5 days, and so I already feel like I know you. Maybe other people who have talked with you that have read your book have felt the same way.
Well, that was part of the idea. The book's really written in two parts, kind of the before and after my injury, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But I certainly wanted to put a lot of my previous life, so to speak, out there. I really wanted people to kind of feel me, connect with my story. So hopefully as we got further into the book and they learned more about what happened, there was more of a connection there that not just to me, but might help them appreciate, what other people go through and what their families and loved ones deal with. So I was hoping that if I could make somehow a connection with the reader, make them feel a little bit invested, it might help raise the awareness and the importance of what I'm trying to talk about in regards to spinal cord injuries in the second half of the book.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. Glad you kind of have that connection. It sounds like so that's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And you are a native Clevelander.
Yes.
And we're here today, up north. Yes. And so you grew up.
I was born and raised in Cleveland. Went up through high school, and then left for college out of state. And then worked my way back after my college graduation with different career roles in Northeast Ohio, and then ultimately was down in Virginia for a couple of years, and then back here. So most of my life has been Northeast Ohio. I was fortunate, although at the time I probably wanted to strangle them, and I'm sure they wanted to strangle me, as with any any family growing up. But my mom and dad, they've been nothing but supportive my whole life. There's really not a time when I think back to my life where I ever felt that I didn't have their support or didn't have their full attention if there was something I wanted to pursue, no matter how bizarre that endeavor might have sounded to them. And of course my sister came along. We really got close once I went away to college, and I think a little bit of the distance kind of helped that appreciation we had for each other, as well as just, they say guys mature a little bit later in life. So it took me a while, but when I was in college, I think I finally realized, just how great my sister was, and, just the support that she's always shown me as well. And fortunately for me, if there was a place to have the accident and to have to go through what I am going through, being here close to family, it's made a lot of difference. I can honestly say I don't know if my recovery would have progressed the way it has in a good way had it not been for the strong support network I've had. And that also extends outside of my family with very close friends and new friends I've made. But just from the early beginnings of being injured and just where I am now, my family, it's just been really, as cliche as it sounds, there's no way to really repay them or express the support that they've given me.
Yeah. For you growing up, sports were really important.
Yes. And, as I touch on in my book, I'm a big believer that for any child, youth, sports can just have such a major influence and impact on a kid's life. Just learning the value of hard work, commitment, working for something, realizing that you may not get the goal that you work towards, but what you learn and the lessons learned along the way can pay dividends down the road, as I've found out. And my dad, from the time before I really could walk, I think, he had me enrolled in swimming lessons, and I swam my whole life, got involved with baseball very young on, and continued with that, played soccer, basketball, eventually got into football, wrestling, track. I mean, I really wasn't afraid to try a different sport. Baseball and football were the ones that stuck with me. But as I mentioned, the lessons that I learned, not just through participating in sports, but reading about other individuals and other athletes and some of the hardships that they went through along their journey really kind of helped lay a strong, firm groundwork for just the attitude that I've been able to use today to apply to different things I face.
Mm-hmm. And you've talked about it in the book, but you have a lot of sports figures who have been instrumental in inspiring you.
Yes, and the biggest one that comes to mind immediately is a gentleman by the name of Dennis Byrd, and he was a football player for the New York Jets. And I first heard about his story back in 1992 when I was in high school, flipping through the pages of Sports Illustrated, and read a story that about this athlete who had broke his neck on a freak play when he collided with a teammate on a Sunday afternoon, and woke up in the hospital and just spoke of what the first things he remembered were, the last things he remembered were, and really kind of what he saw as his path forward. And the strength, the grit, and just the will that this guy was, that I was reading coming through these words, really stayed with me. And there was one passage in particular that he mentioned, a Bible verse that someone had transcribed for him on a big poster board and hung it above his bed, was Romans 8:18. For I reckon that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. And for whatever reason, like I said, I was in my teens, sophomore, I believe, in high school. That just struck a chord with me. And I literally got up off the floor where I was reading this magazine, sat down at my desk on an old word processor, and typed up that scripture verse and tucked it away in my wallet. And as I tell the story in my book, I carried that verse with me for the next 20 odd years. And there really wasn't a week, let alone a few days that went by where I wouldn't pull that out and just look at that Romans verse. And it was very important to me. And years later, in 2009, in a diving accident, I broke my neck in a freak injury. And when I woke up in the hospital and was at the point where I was starting to realize what had happened, one of the first things I saw was a poster hanging above my hospital bed with that same verse transcribed on it. And someone had gone into my wallet. They had taken that verse out of my wallet and transcribed it. And it didn't occur to me at the time really what was happening as far as how powerful that message would be, and just the sheer fascination and just the infinitesimal odds that here I was connected now to this guy who had always been an inspiration for me, not just because of that verse, but how he had endured his hardship with a broken neck and what he had gone on to accomplish afterwards. And now I was looking up at this hospital wall, looking at that same verse, getting ready to begin my own journey. And, when I think about it even now, it still just gives me chills to think of the connection that verse had with me throughout my life before my injury and has had with me since. And I really believe that subconsciously, it's helped lay the groundwork for just the attitude and the faith and the belief in knowing that, difficult times, as difficult as they may seem, they're not impossible to get through. Tough times do pass. Requires a lot of work on the individual's part himself. I don't think it's fair to just sit back and always hope for things to get better. But if you're willing to work, hope's a big part of it. But if you're willing to work and keep a positive attitude and try your best every day to just get a little bit stronger and push through, that glory can be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's still being revealed. I certainly don't think I've reached my destination. People always ask me about my road to recovery and what it was like, and I always tell them, hey, I'm still on it. I mean, there is no definitive endpoint for me. My definition of recovery, someone might think, oh, well, if you got up and were walking again, is that the end point? And for me, it's not. That'd be great if that day comes, but I don't sit around and hope for that day or pray for that day. I just pray that every day I can get up, have a great day. I can, accomplish the things I want to accomplish, to be able to reach others the way I've been trying to, to learn more about myself the way I've been trying to. And I think that whole self-discovery and that resilience path is, doesn't end until my time ends. So recovery for me isn't necessarily a target as much as just a kind of a road that I find myself on. So and again, going back to just Dennis's whole outlook and several other athletes that I've always looked up to and encountered have encountered adversity, just learning from others with their mentality and the tools they use and they applied to help get through tough times has certainly served me very well.
Yeah. And I know at one point during some of your dark days, some of the trying times in your recovery, you determined that you were a realist, I think is the term you used to describe yourself.
Yes. I don't want this to sound as, pessimistic, because sometimes when I was even describing it to myself and I was preparing to write the book, I realized I can come across that. I looked at my situation. I was aware of the odds, the statistics, the facts. And I didn't want to set myself up for these impossible tasks that my happiness would depend on. I'm a very goal-oriented individual, and I like having goals that I work towards, I attain. But I also realized that I needed to attain goals to kind of keep that fire burning, to keep moving forward. So I would set up a lot of small tasks. I say small relative to what everyone thinks of the holy grail goal when you're paralyzed is walking. But for me, it was learning how to breathe again, learning how to handle a whole day in a wheelchair without passing out or getting as fatigued. Exactly, the whole incremental process. And I thought if I could go from A to B to C and achieve these little goals along the way, that was kind of like the gas. I needed to refuel my tank to keep going, rather than just going for that one long drive to get to that one, mecca of goals. And if you don't get there and you've set yourself up for everything to reach that goal, even if it's not for a lack of hard work, it can be very damaging to the psyche. So for me, I definitely wanted to be realistic as far as attaining measurable goals, as well as still having long-term goals. Each time I reached a new goal, it just refueled my tank and it really lifted my spirits. And a friend who had visited me in the hospital, I remember the nursing home I was in, very clearly had said to me that, celebrate every victory, no matter how small. I might not have realized the magnitude of those words at the time, but it's really stuck with me because every victory, even if it's small, it's still a victory.
Right.
And it's forward momentum, it's progress. And I really tried to keep that philosophy with me today.
Yeah. So before your injury, you were in international business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I studied finance at Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania for my undergrad, and also minored in Mandarin Chinese, and had met a woman years earlier who was very involved in the international market in China. And she had planted some seeds in my mind about just the importance of international business going into the future and how important China would be on the world stage. And this was back in 95, I believe, when I was having this conversation. So I went back to Lehigh after that summer when I met this woman for my sophomore year and signed up for a Chinese class and had the opportunity eventually to go to China, to live in China, to study over there. And for several years, those next couple of years in college, kind of positioned myself into learning and understanding international finance and global trade and world markets as they related to, from a business standpoint. And when I came out of college, my first job was working for a multinational company with the opportunity to, at some point, get over to China. I had done an internship while I was in school where I worked internationally in England. So I had a fair bit of international experience to complement my education. Once I actually got out into the workplace and started working, I was really able to put it to use. And unfortunately, at that time, this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, a few things were happening in the industry where I was working, and a lot of their international programs were scaled back. So I wasn't able to fully immerse myself the way I had intended. But I still kept up with the Chinese language as best as I can. Eventually, that kind of rescinded into just date nights at a Chinese restaurant, trying to impress a date by ordering in Chinese. But
I'm sure you did too.
I'd like to think I did. Although if I didn't, I was saying something wrong. At least the servers just smiled and kind of made me look good. So, but I wasn't able to eventually go as full on into that career as I would have liked. But my career took a totally different path, one which I believe served me better, which certainly set me up for a lot of future success. It's like with anything in life, there's certain experiences or certain goals, and you might start out in one direction, but as long as you're open along the way and you have your eyes open and you're willing to listen and just kind of be aware of your surroundings, you'd be surprised at what other opportunities are presented to you. And sometimes they don't come wrapped up in a shiny little package like you would expect, but it's only later, if not years down the road where you realize, what a gift that was that you had kind of either stumbled upon serendipitously or you were, actually forced into in some way or another. And a lot of my life, even since my accident, I've still experienced a lot of those opportunities and those gifts that mask themselves as something else at the time, but later you look back on it and you realize where you're at, and you're very thankful that you had that opportunity. In a long roundabout way, a career in international business was, the starting point that really helped me discover just a lot of other different opportunities that have served me well.
And it seemed to me too that your competitive nature that maybe was bred through sports that carried on into the workplace.
It did, and it's one of those things where I've always been competitive, always up for a challenge. I have never let it get the best of me where it becomes a liability or something that can be disruptive. But when I was working, I was always competitive, whether it was just expecting the best of myself or the teams I led, just demanding excellence and assisting and leading by example, to get the best out of everyone, and then being able to benefit and realize the fruits of our labor together. Also on some of the side things I did and some of the side projects I got involved with throughout my personal career, something as silly as making a bet with a coworker once that I wouldn't ride a bull, and actually finding a place, believe it or not, that would let anyone who was dumb enough, I guess, pay a $5 fee and hop on a bull and try it out. And I did that, and then long story, but that turned up into about a 2-year little bit of a rodeo career, as I like to call it.
And I couldn't believe that wasn't the thing that resulted in your injury.
No, and when
Spoiler alert, sorry.
Well, yeah, no, when I look back on it now, I mean, I had going back to the competitive nature and just looking for challenges and excitement and just that drive. I mean, from bull riding to skydiving to whitewater rafting, rock climbing, some of the other dumb, stupid exploits that you do at the time, thinking that, oh yeah, this is a good idea. Yeah, those a few broken bones maybe, or scrapes and bruises, but that wasn't what ultimately was the biggest injury and the biggest learning point in my life. So it's funny how that works out. Sometimes it's the simplest and littlest things, the most innocent of actions that can have the biggest impact on someone's life, whether good or bad.
Right.
And if it's for the bad, then it's up to you to make it good. And by that, I just mean using all the tools and all those other exploits and maybe the sports you've played, the lessons you've learned, the books you've read, the people you've talked to, using all that information that's you've built up a repository, whether you realize it or not, throughout your life. That's now when all that stuff really becomes important, and you can draw back on those tools and use those to kind of help you navigate the waters that you might find yourself facing as a result of something unfortunate that you weren't prepared for.
Right.
I was 33 years old, and I was up at a cottage up in Michigan, and I dove off a pier into an area that would turn out was 33 inches of water. But I was very familiar with the area. I had been up there weeks earlier, swimming, diving in the same area. Whether it was the hot weather that year, the summer, drying up the water, who knows, a combination of other factors, but that's not important. That's not important. But for whatever reason, that day didn't go as the plan, and I dove off the cliff or the pier. I smashed right down into the the muddy lake bed. I never lost consciousness, never blacked out, but right away when I had hit the ground and smashed into the ground, I knew I had broken my neck. And I had played enough football and wrestling and sports growing up that I knew the difference between a injury and something serious that was catastrophic. Within a split second, I knew right away that this there was no coming back from. This was bad. Your mind starts processing that, and you're processing a million thoughts, in nanoseconds. But suddenly I then remember that, okay, I'm down by myself here. My family and friends, they were up in a cottage. I had gone down to the pier by myself for a quick swim. So here I am, conscious, face down in about 2.5 feet of water, unable to move, unable to breathe by myself. And I'm just staring at this, soggy bottom. And it's just a myriad of thoughts that are going through my mind. And I remember my heart just started beating fast, very deafening, to the point that it felt like it was filling the whole lake. And as I realized what was going on and ultimately that I was about to die, it just started beating faster and faster, louder and louder, and to the point where I literally thought it was going to just blow up or explode right in my chest. And I'm trying to just stay calm, but the flood of emotions are just going through my mind. The first thing I thought right away was guilt. And I was married at the time. I had a beautiful wife, a great relationship. We were getting ready to start a family. And here I was now laying face down with a broken neck, floating in some dirty water. And I just felt incredibly guilty that I had just ruined a future for both of us. That guilt quickly turned into fear as I realized that I was going to die. And then that fear just became a profound sadness when I comprehended that, there was no one left to say goodbye to. I love you too one more time, to hug. I was just going to die by myself, cold and wet and paralyzed in in a lake. And at that moment, I said my prayers. I prayed to God, and I asked him to look over my wife and watch my family, take care of them, and forgive me for any wrongs I had done, accept me, as I was. And then for whatever reason, just decided, rather than sitting there and letting that impending doom just continue to take over, I opened up my mouth and just let the water course in through my mouth, down my throat. And that was the last thing I remember until, like I said, I woke up in a hospital bed a couple days later, and that's when I had seen that poster, and also when I started to realize just the severity of what had happened. So yeah, it wasn't jumping out of an airplane or falling off a bull or smashing into a rock while whitewater rafting. It was a innocent afternoon dive off of a very familiar spot, just to grab a quick, refreshing swim that ultimately, proved to be the biggest trauma that I would ever encounter.
Yeah. For our listeners, another reason to get headstrong is to find out how was it that Scott was found.
Oh yeah,
You've got to get the book to. I'm not going to let you
Nope,
tell
I
our
will
listeners
hold that back, but
because
it's an amazing. I will say,
amazing.
I found how I was found and ultimately survived the ordeal. It was pretty remarkable,
Yes.
and it kind of really played into a specific cliche, but I won't mention that because I'll let the guys read the book. But
Yes.
but fortunately, I was found, and ultimately, had a long road back, and probably about 10 or 12 days after that injury, when I was laying in bed, that's when a doctor had come in.
Still
and
in Michigan.
Still, yes, it was up in Michigan where I had dove into this pier, and I was at a hospital in Kalamazoo. The doctor came in and explained to me, Scott, you've broken your neck. You're never going to walk. You're never going to move a part of your body again. You're never going to be able to breathe on your own. I was on a respirator, a ventilator. You'll probably never be able to eat or swallow on your own, and most likely never be able to be out of bed for extended periods of time. And your life, as you know it, is really going to be about just trying to get comfortable and make it through each day. You know, it sounds kind of rough to have someone tell you that, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And he just said it very matter-of-factly.
He just said it very matter-of-factly. And, you know, looking back, I think I'm okay with that. You know, I didn't need him to kind of give me false hope. Maybe there could have been a little bit more, you know, tact in the way he delivered it. But I had already known at that point how bad things were. And he was just telling me, look, I don't want to set you up for an awful, you know, just for an awful future. I want you to know what things are going to look like. And the reason he did this, as I would come to find out, is Michigan has a law that if you're on artificial means or life support and you're with it, you're still lucid enough to make your own decisions, you can request to be taken off any type of machine that's keeping you alive and to die. Those were his words, as harsh as it is. He said, do you want to live? And up until this point, you know, whether it was, like I said, weeks, days leading up to it, I would have these periodic moments of consciousness where I was just telling myself, I don't want to live. I mean, this is awful. Who wants to live like this? I can't hug my wife anymore. I can't help my family. I can't walk my dog. I mean, there's just really nothing. I don't want to live like this. With all the adventure I had sought, the life I had tried to live, just the excitement to be stuck in a bed, completely dependent on other people, unable to breathe on my own. You know, I want to die. And I would pray for death. And now here I was given that choice by this doctor, you know, almost like a answer to my prayers. Do you want to die? Without hesitation, with as little of a voice as I could muster, I said, no, I want to live. And, you know, to this day, I'll tell you that was the Holy Spirit, God, pushing those words out, because my mind was not fully prepared, I don't think, to say those words. But somehow in that moment, those were the words that came out. And I think I thought about, you know, my life, my family, my wife, my friends, and realized, no, I still have some living to do. I don't know what that looks like or what that's going to entail, but I'm not done. And I guess subconsciously I was thinking, as long as I have a say in the matter, you know, I'm going to try to give my all and keep going. And I think a lot of that probably does in some way come back to the way I was raised by my parents, and supported, and the athletic endeavors, and just knowing that nothing was ever going to be handed to me. Things were tough at times when you encounter challenges, and you need to work through those. And sometimes you achieve great success. Other times you come up short. But, you know, either way, you learn something along the way. You know, I wasn't processing all this at that point in time, but I just, like I said, that toolbox of all these collections and experiences I had encountered throughout my life and accumulated were all right there. And like I said, with the help of the Holy Spirit, helping me kind of push out those words that, you know, to really back up the inner will and the, you know, in the spirit that was still, you know, fighting within me. So, you know, I chose to live, and a couple days later, I was transferred by another helicopter ride from Kalamazoo, Michigan, to Cleveland's Metro Health Hospital, where I went through a very arduous 6-month recovery process and rehabilitation. And again, by recovery, it was, in this sense, the definition was just enough to be able to get you out of the hospital and not have to require all the constant doctors and nurses. However, you know, my life, and to this day it still does require, you know, 24/7 care, as far as an attendant always close at hand to help assist me with stuff. You know, but at the time I never even thought I'd get to where I am today. It was just every day, one day at a time. But eventually I spent 6 months at the hospital, worked through a tremendous amount of challenges, and was released into a nursing home, while my wife and I made plans to kind of get our apartment in order for what was next. And at the age of 33, I went into a nursing home expecting to be there for a couple weeks, and ultimately was there for 14 months. And, you know, along the way, I went through a divorce, and, you know, my wife decided that, you know, she just, you know, wasn't up for, you know, for what the future looked like it held. And she left, and that kind of put a damper on what my future was, where I was going to live, how I was going to live. So those few weeks turned into 14 months. And, you know, I'll tell you, and I'm a little proud of myself when I look back on it, being 33, stuck in a nursing home, surrounded by individuals that, you know, let's face it, you know, they're there to die. That can really mess with anyone.
Right.
And, that's where my inner will was probably more tested, believe it or not, than it was in those immediate weeks that followed my injury. Because every day I'd get up and I was in that go, go, go mentality, let's try to get better. But here you are constantly surrounded by that, as I said, that no, no, no mentality and people that were literally there waiting to die. I had to really look within myself and find that inner strength to kind of not just get me through each day, but get me through in a day that I was improving and getting better, so that I could eventually get out of that nursing home. And fortunately, again, through a great support network of family and friends, I was able to achieve some milestones and ultimately was released from the nursing home, went into an apartment, as I mentioned, was set up with 24/7 care. So I'd have different nurses and aides through different shifts come and help me slowly get back to a normal life and as normal as it could be. And fortunately, wouldn't allow myself to take a day off. I mean, I'd have bad days, but every day just tried to keep getting up and try to just do a little bit more than I did the day before. And that whole attitude and that mentality really served me well.
It wasn't just about you making physical progress.
Correct. And the physical, that's going to come or it's not going to come. And by that, I mean, you can keep working hard and wanting to try to keep up with your therapy and the exercise they give you. But the body's going to repair itself the way it's going to repair itself, especially when it comes to the spine. And in some cases, no matter how hard you work, there may never be any improvement. In other cases, there may be more improvement than you would think. And that's just the physiological or the science of the human anatomy. The part that I could absolutely control and ultimately I believe was more important than anything was my psyche and my attitude. I used to, when I played baseball, I used to wear a baseball hat that had the word attitude written on the brim of the hat. And it was the first thing I saw and the last thing I saw each time I came in the dugout and took my hat off. And that just always reminded me, hey, right attitude for the right situation. And I kind of maintained that philosophy throughout my life with everything I did. And, always, would even preach that to others. Attitude does equal altitude. I just, I had to keep that philosophy. I did keep that philosophy, fortunately. And it was my attitude and keeping a strong head that helped me persevere when the times got tough, when you would work extremely hard and just not see the returns that you wanted. Or I'd be working, I'd look around me at others that had spinal cord injuries that were in a gym with rehab as well, and seeing them make progress and not making the progress that they were. And it really took a lot to get out of my sense of thinking that I had to compare myself to others. Because throughout my life, with career, with school, with other athletic endeavors, I think it's human nature. You're always kind of comparing yourself to either the best in the field or at least those you compete against as a measuring stick. Well, with the injury, like with a spinal cord injury, you're really, competing against yourself. Two people could have the exact same injury with completely different outcomes. The spine really is an enigma in regards to how it repairs itself. I had to learn to just not measure myself against others. Again, to just the idea of setting those small goals I spoke about, that's where that became important. Because I had something to work towards, something to achieve. And it may not be this monumental goal, but I was like, okay, I did one more thing today I said I was going to do. And that was how I kind of stayed within my lane, so to speak, and not get distracted. Every day there's different challenges. I always tell people the easiest part about being paralyzed is sitting still. But it's all the other things you don't realize about, whether it's pressure sores, kidney issues, pulmonary issues, bone density issues.
That was so eye-opening to me.
Yeah, and I talk a lot about it in my book, which I think people will really get a better appreciation for and understand.
Definitely.
Just when you see someone in a wheelchair, you can wonder, I wonder what happened, and I wonder if they can walk or what they can move. You talk about the tip of the iceberg, and not just the tip of the iceberg, but that's the least important. Because let's face it, if I can't walk, I can still live a great life. But if I can't breathe or I have kidney disease, heart issues, serious bone density issues, those are the things that can lead to really rough situations, whether it's sepsis or other type of pneumonias and situations that ultimately can be your undoing. So coming to grips with that, I think, is a bit of a mind game that you have to be prepared to handle. But also, like you said in my book, I think it's important to let other people know that as well too. Just so that if you do come across someone or you do find yourself in a situation where you're encountering something, realize that you want to be prepared because there are multiple issues that you need to address. And just because something bad happens to you when you get through it, you don't get a free pass.
Right.
You know, the world doesn't work that way. It doesn't mean that, okay, you know, you've kind of checked off your mark for adversity. Now it's going to be smooth sailing. No, you know, I mean, if it, you know, it can rain
Nope.
one day, it can rain the next day. So you just got to be prepared to handle each thing as it comes to you. Trust in yourself, kind of trust that you've gotten through it before. Use those same tools, you can get through it again. But I do talk a lot in the book about that, trying to help people understand just how encompassing a spinal cord injury is, as well as the different resources that are out there and the different techniques and ways to overcome each of those certain issues. But, you know, it's a never-ending game.
Right.
And if you don't have that right attitude, if you don't keep that strong belief in yourself and working hard and, you know, in my opinion, faith in God and just his plan, you're going to be stuck. And that's the worst. I mean, I can't move as it is. The last thing I want to do is be, you know, paralyzed by my own attitude, as opposed to just from my muscles. Because the attitude is the one thing that I get to wake up every day and have some control over. And I might as well, you know, use it to benefit me rather than letting it defeat me. I've been fortunate, just the opportunities that this situation has presented. I began speaking very early on after my injury to a lot of other patients, individuals that had been injured as well. And ultimately that speaking, just as the way things would have it, led into a bigger endeavor of speaking to churches, companies, schools, other organizations about just the power of a human attitude, persistence, faith, hard work, that whole slew of things I've talked about, being able to put that into a very streamlined message that other people can apply in their life, whether it's in a business setting, family setting, personal setting, you know, health setting, whatever that is. So I've been fortunate from that standpoint. And along the way, that's also led to involvement with other organizations, whether it's an organization I'm involved with called LEAP, which is a local nonprofit here in Cleveland, Ohio, that helps individuals with disabilities break down those barriers that exist in society, whether it's getting from a nursing home into a home, finding a job, dealing with accessibility issues. That organization had actually helped me transition out of the nursing home into my apartment. Just was so thankful for them and continue to stay involved with them that ultimately joined their board. I also was asked to be a member of an organization called Adversity to Advocacy. It's a nonprofit based out of Los Angeles, and it's all about connecting people who have had serious adverse conditions in their life and have been able to overcome that, and not just overcome it, but overcome it in a way that has led them to want to help others and be an advocate for others going through that same type of adversity. And it's an alliance of remarkable individuals with a whole different makeup and collective of different challenges that they're facing. It's a great resource to bring all those people together to reach others that are going through something similar. And I also started my own advocacy work, a nonprofit called Getting Back Up, which I founded and run to this day. And we assist individuals with spinal cord injuries in the areas that insurance won't, with adaptable products and exercise-based recovery programs that when insurance says no, and let's face it, they say no a lot, and you know it's expensive to continue to get better and continue to work hard to try to improve your situation every day. And that's why I founded Getting Back Up, which again is, you know, solely relies on the generosity and donations of others to fund programs to help individuals across the country with, you know, with spinal cord injuries get the assistance they need. Those have been the true gifts and the blessings from such a horrible injury that happened to me. I've been able to really get involved with some great initiatives and really hopefully bring some good to other people as a way to not just pay it forward, but to hopefully make a difference, spark some change, inspire others to want to do the same thing. Because let's face it, I mean, if we need to rely on each other. There's a lot that's still not known about spinal cord injuries. there's a lot of resources that still need to be diverted this way that aren't. So, we're still fighting an uphill battle. And the more people that we can empower to want to fight for themselves and fight for others, the more momentum we can garner and hopefully, spark a change. And, I'm not talking about a revolution here that happens overnight, but, it's more of an evolutionary process. And it might unfold slowly over time, but hey, you step back in 2, 3, 5 years and you look at the change that is happening within the medical community or hopefully the insurance community and just the spinal cord, as it relates to spinal cord initiatives in general. And that's pretty powerful to not just be a part of, but to see others benefit from as well.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. So how was it that you got connect with a counselor at Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities?
Great question. When I was in a nursing home, I met a man who was there as well. And he was, unfortunately, he was in a situation he wasn't going to be getting out. But he was talking to me about some of these resources that were out there that I wasn't aware of. And one he mentioned was the Bureau for Vocational Rehabilitation, BVR. And he just mentioned that there's a lot of things they can help you with. You really should contact them. So I did some research, and a caseworker by the name of Janice came out to visit me. I was just amazed at what she was presenting me with as far as resources that existed and ways that they could help me get back to living a normal life, get back to work and doing what I wanted to do. And I certainly, as someone that was always career driven, I knew I'd be doing different work, but I wanted to work. I still wanted to contribute and make a difference in society. And just a few examples of what she was able to do was set me up with a home office, as well as some individuals that helped train me on how to learn to navigate computer, phone, and other electronics with voice-activated software that they provided and trained me to really make a difference, so that now being connected to the world again was as easy as using my voice, which I'm pretty good at using, sometimes too much. But she helped me with that. She helped me with a vehicle. My sister had organized a very successful fundraiser that raised a decent amount of financial aid, and we purchased a vehicle, and BVR was able to take that and supply and complete all the modifications to make that accessible. So now I was in a situation where prior to that, I had to call for public transportation for a provider ride whenever I needed to go somewhere. And that whole spontaneous idea of being able to get up and go see a movie with a friend or even go to a doctor's appointment or just go do something that might not have been planned for 2 or 3 days in advance, I could now do with my own vehicle. And they provided all the maintenance work to get that done and all the modifications. So that made a big difference. And that allowed me now to get back out into the workforce, to go give those talks and those speeches that people were asking me to talk about, to run my nonprofit, getting back up, to use the tools that I needed to use and get where I needed to get, so that I felt I could still be actively engaged in the community. And not to say I wouldn't have discovered it on my own, but had I not had that one, I still remember just sitting in the lobby of the nursing home talking to that gentleman when he just mentioned those 3 letters, BVR. And had I not had that talk, who knows how long it might have taken or, what assistance I would or would not have gotten. So very fortunate for, OOD and BVR and the great people that, that work within that organization and the help they've been able to provide, and, just wish more people were aware of it.
Yeah, definitely. We don't want to be a secret, and it
Right.
really, it helps to have folks like you share your experience so that we can reach more people.
And I talk about that again in a book as well. And hopefully people that are out there, if they know someone and they're reading my story and they know someone in a similar situation, hopefully they will learn about that. And let's face it, if we had unlimited marketing dollars, we could, do some great things. But, organizations like Getting Back Up, like OOD, BVR, they don't. And a lot of it does rely on people sharing the story. And I've had such an amazing and positive and successful story to share as a result of working with the organization and BVR, that it's made it easy to to tell that story. And I just hope that more people do learn about it, do take it seriously, and do look into the services and resources, because just because you suffer an injury like this, doesn't mean your life or your contribution to society or your willingness to want to be engaged has to end.
Right.
In fact, had this not happened to me, I don't know if I would have been able to reach as many people as I have, or to be as engaged as an agent for change, or in a weird way as fulfilled as I would have been if I had just been on that trajectory I was. So again, it's one of those gifts and those blessings that might have literally looked like a pile of mud at the bottom of a lake bed, but has turned out to just be priceless and provide me with so many opportunities to reach others, to tell my story, and to hopefully make an impact and help change society's attitudes, as well as willingness to put resources towards issues like spinal cord injuries and other adversity that people face.
So what's your favorite kind of speaking gig?
I never thought it'd be this, but I really like talking to junior high level students for a couple reasons. One, it's a personal challenge to get up there and be engaging enough to keep their attention, because I know what my attention span was, between the ages of 13 to 16 in that range. Two, they ask the best questions. And I think that's because they're not afraid to ask anything that might be taboo. I mean, I've had people ask me simple things, how my wheelchair works, to how do you go to the bathroom, to, what foods can you not eat anymore, or can you still eat? And it's those simple little innocent questions that I think really help put a face to the injury and connect you with with a child or with a young adolescent, as opposed to some of the more serious topics that businesses and a lot of corporations or companies want to try to talk to, as regards to healthcare or insurance plans or other things along those lines. But the kids are always great. They always want to come up. They want to get pictures. They're not afraid to get in your face and invade that personal space, both figuratively and literally.
That's
and
awesome
that's
that you like that.
Oh, that's great. Now of course the corporations are nice because, let's be honest, they pay better.
Yeah.
But it is rewarding to when you really get to talk to schools and one of the things I'm hoping, and I've began the outreach process, is with my book Headstrong, to be able to get on a reading list of some of these high schools and other organizations, because the book has some very mature and intense subject matter, but I'm hoping it's written in a way that young adults can benefit from and can grasp the magnitude of the subject, but also just the idea of what I am trying to get across, and the idea of trying to live your life with purpose and with the right attitude and with this burning desire to want to get up each day and give it your all. When I do talk to those kids, I think that message always comes across. When I talk to churches or companies, I think that message always comes across. And that's what I try to leave everyone with at the end of the day, is the whole idea of attitude and how powerful it is. And I like to tell people, if you look up the word disabled, which society defines me as now, in a thesaurus, you'll get some pretty ugly words. Sickly, decrepit, stupefied, dilapidated. And these are words I certainly never described myself as prior to my injury. And why I may have a disability right now, I don't see myself as disabled, because I wouldn't use those words to describe me now. So I always try to leave people with the idea that your adversity does not define you. It's how you respond to that adversity that you should choose to let define you, because it's all relative at the end of the day. Whether it's a broken neck, whether it's someone struggling with addiction, whether it's a personal relationship issue, if you let that adversity define you, pardon the pun, but it's going to paralyze you, and it's going to keep you stuck and in a place that you don't want to be in the first place. So choosing to define yourself by your actions and by your attitude will not only serve you better, but I think overall it's just a much better way to live your life anyway. go pick up Headstrong, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, any of the platforms. You'll learn a lot more about my story, a lot more about what's next for me, and hopefully be entertained along the way. So
definitely, there's so much we didn't cover, so many personal things that we could spend a whole nother hour on, that just people gotta get the book Headstrong.
Oh, I hope they do. I hope they get it. I hope they enjoy it. I hope they find a way to make their life a little bit better because of it. And again, follow me at scottwfedor.com and follow my blog, and hopefully continue to be inspired as well as moved to make some kind of change, both in your own life and others' lives.
This has been awesome. I can't thank you enough.
No, thank you. I appreciate being here today, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to some of your listeners.
Thank you.
A transcript of today's episode is available at ood.ohio.gov/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review. We're on social media at Ohio OOD. Do you have a disability? Do you want a job? We can help. oodworks.com.